Hello and welcome to the People of Penn State podcast. I'm Ryan Jones. I'm the editor of the Penn Stater magazine, and I'm here today with a couple of, I think it's safe to call them Penn State lacrosse legends, Jack Posey and TJ Malone, a couple of recent alums who had terrific both individual careers and were part of some really, really strong men's lacrosse teams at Penn State in recent years, joining today from, I think, Dallas and New York. Fellas, is that correct, as you tune in here?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. So, TJ, you're in New York, right?
Yep.
Okay. And, Jack, you're in Dallas?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you both for joining here, and excited to be able to have you guys on together. You guys have a ton of connections, obviously teammates, former roommates, close friends. So it felt like it made sense to get you guys on here together and talk a little bit about both your paths to Penn State, your time here, and then what you've been up to since. Jack, I'll start with you real quick. Can you kind of give us a sense of, I guess, a little bit about your background, where you're from, and how and why you ended up at Penn State for lacrosse and for college?
Yeah, good question. So I was born and raised in South Running, Virginia, which is about 40-ish minutes outside of DC. Growing up, I was a huge athlete, played every sport I could. It was my dream to actually go play football at Virginia Tech when I was super young. Penn State wasn't really on my radar being a Virginia kid. My parents went to a small school in Virginia called Radford, and we just really didn't have many connections to the state. But as I started growing up and when I got to high school, our high school football team candidly was pretty bad. So I didn't really see a pathway forward to playing college. And around my freshman year, at this point in recruiting, kids were actually committing in 8th grade or the fall of their freshman year in high school. So they weren't even playing, a true high school season before committing. It's since changed, but essentially I saw how kids were getting recruited in lacrosse, and I was growing this love for the game, and the pathway looked a lot more clear. So long story short, I changed my focus my freshman year from college football to college lacrosse, and I actually committed in my junior year to Colgate University. And essentially after that year, the coach stepped down. I reopened my recruiting, and basically Coach Tambroni, he saw me play at this Under Armour All-American event. And actually, I wasn't looking to change my commitment, but he reached out and he expressed some interest because I didn't have a head coach at Colgate. And yeah, after coming to Penn State, it was funny. My first ever visit to Penn State was for my first visit with Coach Tambroni. And after he called me, and it was I was driving in, and my dad and I, we came up for the visit from Virginia, and it was raining the whole 3.5-hour trip. We get there, it's kind of a bad day weather-wise. I go and had probably an hour and a half conversation with Coach Tambroni, my dad and I. A wonderful conversation, one that really changed the scope of my recruiting and really brought me into the Penn State way. And after that, we went outside to go tour the place, and it was blue skies, no clouds, and it was almost like it was meant to be. So yeah, that's I flipped over from Colgate to Penn State in the summer going into my senior year. So this was summer of 2018.
Gotcha. And never look back, obviously.
No way, man.
TJ, what's your story as far as how you ended up in Happy Valley?
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, the more every year I kind of realize that the coolest stories are kind of the least conventional ones. And I think Posey and I have very unconventional, untraditional paths to playing at Penn State, but also then playing professional too. So Posey went from Colgate to Penn State. I went from Amherst College, which is a D3 school, to Penn State too. So we were both committed to other schools. And so I kind of had a similar path to Posey. I was interested in all different types of sports. I was playing basketball and lacrosse competitively all 4 years of high school. I wanted to go to Amherst College to get to the best school as possible. And being a NESCAC tool, that was an opportunity. And I would also have, I thought, the opportunity of walking on the basketball team there. So I would have wanted to play two sports. But then Coach Tambroni, similar to how he found Jack, he found me too. So and went up for my first time ever to Happy Valley. Even being a PA kid, I've never been there. Actually grew up a Buckeye fan because my dad was from Cleveland, Ohio. So
TJ, what's your hometown for folks who don't know?
I'm from Unionville,
Right.
Westchester, Pennsylvania. Yeah, specifically Unionville, but I ended up going to Hartford School, which is a private school, about 45 minutes away.
Right.
So Coach Tambroni kind of found me similar to how he did Posey, and went up for a visit for my first time. Unlike Posey's, my visit was very State College-esque, rainy weather, nobody on campus just because it was after school had ended, and it was very late. I was going into my senior, or I just graduated from high school, and I decommitted from Amherst College and committed to Penn State and showed up on campus a couple months later. So that's kind of my story, and that's about it.
TJ, you're a year ahead of Jack, is that right?
Yeah.
Recruiting class wise. So what are your first memories of running into Posey here when you met him? Was it when he was being recruited or when he got up here? What was your impressions of Jack?
My first time meeting Posey, I remember it vividly because the man could talk. Not much has changed, except he's gotten a lot smarter.
Hopefully, man.
He came up as a recruit with his whole class, and him and I hit it off. I was like, this kid's just a good kid. He talks a lot, but I really like him. And that's my first impression of him. And then obviously we played together, and then we had COVID together, so we got sent home. But then we ended up living together for our last year at school, which was pretty great.
Right. So I know, Jack, we were talking a little bit beforehand. You were talking about, TJ's kind of unusual path, not only recruiting wise, but with injuries and stuff like that, and his kind of being off the radar for a while and coming back. And you got a chance to see that firsthand, both as a roommate and as a wall ball teammate for a long time. You guys really spent a lot of time together. Jack, what was your experience of that? Watching TJ, get to know him as a friend and a teammate, but also watching him kind of work through these difficulties before he had a chance to kind of really show what he could do.
Yeah, so just to kind of give all the viewers and listeners a little perspective, TJ, were you the rookie of the year in the Big Ten or the freshman of the year?
No, I was not.
So you probably could have been, or you were in the running for it. So TJ was
yeah.
That was Joey Epstein. He was like one of the best players in the country that year.
Right.
But yeah, maybe not too far off. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's so I should say that. You're right. TJ, you had a very good freshman year, but then you were kind of off the radar after that with injuries, right? Right.
Right. Yeah, correct.
So essentially with TJ, right, came on the scene as a freshman, was one of the best players, one of the top point scorers on one of the best offenses ever that Penn State's had. Not only Penn State, but one of the best offenses ever in the NCAA. And then my freshman year, the year after, so TJ's sophomore year, that's when COVID hit. So we all got sent home, and then TJ dealt with a bunch of injuries from his junior and senior year. So he had this, it's called a breakout, standout freshman year. And then there was about a 3-year period where we had COVID, and then there was 2 years where he was dealing with a lot of injuries, and he wasn't getting a lot of good answers, and there was just a lot of confusion and frustration. And I think the thing that was so special about TJ, and he taught me so much, was my career at Penn State, I didn't necessarily play right away. I didn't really start to get consistent time until I was a junior. So I didn't really play my freshman year. I started one game my sophomore year due to an injury for one of our other starters. And I really, I had this dream and this goal that I wanted to help Penn State win a national championship, and I wanted to contribute at the highest level. And for me, it was so frustrating because everybody wants to come in and everybody wants to play right away. But it took me almost 3 years, basically 2.5, almost 3 years for me to get to a point where I was contributing. And to be along TJ in that path where, I was working so hard just to get onto the field. And for TJ, it was kind of a similar path because he was working so hard to get back to the field. So we kind of bonded over that, that desire to get back and that desire to improve daily. And I know TJ loves the concept of Kaizen and just small improvements each day. And that's something that I think that we both share and we both hold pretty close. to who we are as people and to who we are as athletes. And, we really bonded over that. And for me, it was cool getting to watch TJ because the world, and we've talked about this, like the world essentially forgot about him. Like he was one of the best players in the country as a freshman. And 3 years go by, and it was funny too. And we were talking about this, Ryan, before, but even some of our teammates, like sophomores on the team who had known TJ for a year, hadn't seen him play. So when he came back, finally after all of he got finally recovered and all that kind of stuff, and he first started playing again, guys were like, hey, who's this? Like, where's he been the whole time? And I'm like, guys, like, he's been putting in work. He just had we'd go before class, we'd go early morning. And he was just always putting in work, and had faith that if he didn't give up and he kept going, he would heal. Because, I mean, he'll talk about it too, but his doctor said to him, and I'm not trying to take your story, TJ, but they told him to retire and hang his cleats up and stop playing.
Right.
TJ just had the faith that if he continued and did all the right things and just kept getting better each day, that his time could come. He could get back on that field. And I mean, for me, I went through an injury as well. And if I hadn't had the example of TJ, would I have gotten through it? I mean, yeah, of course I would have, but I wouldn't have been able to do it as efficiently, or had the hope and the faith that I actually did. I mean, TJ was my biggest inspiration when I was going through that recovery.
TJ, did you, first of all, yeah, I'm sorry, Jack. Yeah, absolutely.
That's it.
TJ, did you have that sense along the way? First of all, did you, while you're in the middle of it, while you're rehabbing, you're trying to get through this thing, you're mostly off the field for this long stretch. Did you have a sense of kind of always I know I'm going to get back, I'm going to get through this, I'm going to get back on the field, or were there times where you maybe weren't sure? And also, I guess, to kind of add to that, as you think about it, to have teammates and friends, particularly a guy like Jack, who you were close to, kind of side by your side the whole way, kind of what that meant as you went through that process.
Yeah, well, first of all, I really appreciate the kind words, Jack, and I think it's funny how God works. And I went through that really tough time, and then a year later, Posey went through a really tough time in the fact that he had to go through his surgery with his knee, and that was probably the toughest moment of his life. And so I really hope that I provided a good example when I went through it, so that he could have some more tools to help him get through that time period. So it is kind of amazing how things come full circle. But yeah, I would say there was a lot of doubt, especially early on. I had went through a couple of years of not playing. So when I was going through this rehab process, I had no idea how good I was going to be or how bad I was going to be, because I didn't really know where I had nobody to compare myself to. It was just a battle of me versus me. And because when you're injured, nobody else is really injured with you or has the same exact spot as you. So
Right.
You have to just compete against yourself every day. And so I just did that, and I was just relentless about it. And I had such great support. I mean, there were some really hard times with Posey. We would play wall ball together, and we would just pour our hearts out to each other. I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling with this. And I think it's important as D1 athletes. Everybody has doubts. Everybody has fears. And if you don't, you're just lying. So it's important to just be able to share that with each other, especially just with, as a D1 athlete, you're supposed to be this masculine guy. But I really do believe that the more vulnerable you can be, the closer you can get and the better bonds you can have. And I think Posey and I did that with each other. And we were just honest about our struggles, been like, hey, I'm struggling with this. I need ideas. I can bounce this off of him. And the wall was our place to do that. It was a safe space. We were getting better, our skills, but also just developing a relationship and talking with each other. And so that was huge and monumental for me, because I had someone to just talk to through this process, because I was just, like I said, competing against myself, and I needed an outlet. And Posey and I were outlets for each other. So yeah, I think there was tons of doubts throughout the journey, but that really helped. And then it's I really like this story about how the first time I kind of realized that I was back was actually during our our first practice back in January of 2023. So the year we went to the Final Four, I had just come back. I just started running in December of the year before. And so January, we come back our first practice and we have a run test. And
this was electric, man.
And so we have a run test, and I just got back. So like I'm barely just started running, jogging really, never sprinting. And so I wake up that morning, I'm like, all right, I'm probably not going to run the test just because like Steve, our trainer, Steve Murray's probably not going to let me because I'm just getting back, whatever. And I get in, I'm like, it's like, hey, do you want to run the run test? Like, just give it a try. Just go like 75%, just to run with the guys and just to see how you're feeling. Like, this will give us a good baseline. Like, hey, what do you need to work on? How are you feeling? And then, so I do it. I'm like, yeah, let's give it a try. And so I start running it. I'm like, wow, I feel pretty good. And then I just keep running. And then I just keep running. It's a test that basically you go to failure. It's a similar concept to like suicides. If you can think about that, just like basically go until you can't, and then you have to get progressively faster. It's a whole system, but we don't need to get into that. But basically, I'm running. I'm like, I'm not hurting right now. My hips do not hurt. I am not that tired, and I just kept running. And I end up tying for first place with one of our Posey and I other captain, Grant Hawes, and it was just a pretty surreal experience. And the boys all surrounded me after and were just like, wow, that was awesome. And it was a very inspiring moment for me because it kind of showed that there's all this work I was putting in. I had no idea if I was, on the right track or not. I knew at that moment I was on the right track, and if I just kept going, good things were going to happen.
Yeah, that's incredible. Just so I'm clear, where were you guys running? Was that treadmills or was that outside, I assume?
It was in Haluba Hall.
Okay.
Yeah,
so just doing laps or end to end?
Yeah, and more end to end.
Okay, gotcha.
So like 40 yards and back.
TJ and I couldn't explain our run test to you if we tried. It was
complicated.
So
like calculus, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh God, I know you were. I know you'd be gassed at the end. I think that's the only thing people need to understand, right?
Yeah,
you
exactly.
would be tired. Well, TJ, you mentioned that was going into. So was that ultimately your eligibility wise your junior year and Jack your senior year? Is that right?
No. So that was my 5th year, and that was Jack's 4th year.
Oh, I have it backwards. Okay.
Yeah,
with the injury stuff, that's why I was trying to keep that straight. So.
Right. Yep.
So Jack, you were a captain that year as well, right? The Final Four run.
So no, I was a captain the following year. So my freshman year was that 2020 COVID year. So then that's where I got it. And TJ and I essentially we graduated at the same time.
Right.
Because TJ had some of the medical red shirt and he had the COVID year.
Right.
And then I just had that COVID year. So I ended up doing 5, and reluctantly I'll say it, but TJ ended up doing 6.
Yep.
We featured as our alumni association members should know, we featured TJ in the Penn State magazine last year, so they got a chance to read a little bit about his story in there as well. Jack, for you again to come here, you weren't planning on coming here in the first place. It wasn't on your radar, and then you were planning on going to another school. You end up here to end up as a co-captain, to have a Final Four team experience. What was that like for you to sort of wrap your career up and look back at the things you helped accomplish while you were here?
I mean, really, it was a testament to a lot of different things. I mean, I think first and foremost, it was a testament to God and His ability to give us the strength to endure and to persist over our career. Because, I mean, TJ, his freshman year, he was on the first Final Four team that Penn State ever had. And then after that, there was some more dark years for the Penn State lacrosse program. Like my sophomore year, we went, I think, like 4-7. Just a real letdown of a season. My junior year, obviously dealing with a lot of injuries, not having TJ and a couple other really key guys. We went 3-11, and we lost, I think, 6 one-goal games, and 3 of those were teams that ended up being in the Final Four. So we started out in 2020. We were, I think, the number 1 ranked team or a top 5 ranked team throughout the beginning. And then it was really like a steep descent into this like valley where Penn State was rising rapidly, and we were one of the best teams or best programs in the country. And then it almost in an instant, just we lost it all. And I think throughout that time, especially the guys in TJ's class and the guys in my class, and I mean, there was the whole team too, but we really kind of felt like we came into the program at such a high point and we were letting it down. We took a lot of ownership and responsibility over the obligation to get Penn State back to where Coach Tambroni and all the classes before us had built it up to. Man, it was such an honor. My senior year, TJ's 5th year, when the year before we had gone 3-11. I think everybody at that point had gone home after that season, and none of us were satisfied with it. None of us obviously weren't satisfied with it, but all of us that we deeply felt the obligation and responsibility to turn the ship around and to really commit to Coach Tambroni's mission for us, which was to build and sustain a championship culture on and off the field. And it really was, man, that in the sense of like a journey, one of the greatest journeys of my life. Up until this point, probably the greatest journey of my life. In the sense of trying to go out and accomplish something with a group of dedicated and just great, young men. Because everyone took ownership, like from the top down all the way to, I don't even want to say like the bottom, but like everybody on the team. It didn't matter what role it was. The guys in the scout team, like our scout team that year, TJ, I mean, the bomb squad, like they were unbelievable. And they took so much accountability and ownership over showing up and practicing as hard as they could and giving the starters the best look. And so many guys improved tremendously from that year or from the previous year to the year before, and helping us get to the Final Four. And it was special, going from that point where we were at the top of the mountain or close to the top of the mountain, and then being a part of that collapse, and then to be able to find the hope and faith in each other and be able to, TJ said, like lean on each other and work with each other and vent to each other and just unite to then build that program back up. And our final year together, this past season, we made it to the NCAA tournament, and that was the first time Penn State had gone back to the NCAA tournament. And while we didn't get as far as we hoped, we had a first round exit against Georgetown. It was still a part of like laying that brick, as Coach Tambroni would say, and like building the house of Penn State, and another milestone, because we made it to the Final Four the year before. And I think what we realized, especially after that 3-11 season, is like winning is hard, like especially when you play our schedule. Like we essentially play the Ivy League, and then we play the Big Ten, and those are two of the best conferences in college lacrosse. And for us to like truly understand, like when you only win 3 games and I think we had 12 wins the next year when we made it to the Final Four, like you appreciate those wins a whole lot more. And but yeah, it's just to be able to go on top, man. It was to go back to the NCAA tournament in our final year. I mean, it was one of the greatest honors of my life to be able to wear the blue and white and just to honor and represent Penn State. I was grateful for it, and to do it alongside my best friends and to accomplish a lot of the goals we set out for ourselves. It was awesome, man. You're bringing a smile on my face this morning just thinking about it, but I appreciate you.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I've had a chance to get out to a lot of games in recent years and see you guys. And, again, I graduated in the 90s here, and I remember the program was always decent, right? It was always like a decent program here. But that NCAA tournament for lacrosse, if people don't know, it's a small one, right? It's not like the NCAA basketball tournament with 68 teams. It's a very select group. It is hard to make that tournament. And for you guys to have it to that level where you've had, Final Fours twice in the span of 5 years, back-to-back years in the tournament, that's a big deal. It's a big jump. And to get to that level consistently, that's no small thing. TJ, can you kind of build on what Jack said there? Maybe just talk about the legacy that you guys have been able to leave. Again, what you accomplished over the previous 5-6 years, and the level that you've kind of helped raise the program to with what you left behind.
Yeah, Great question. I think Posey described it perfectly, just with the ups and downs. Like you talked about, I came in my freshman year. We go straight to the Final Four, and sophomore year we're having one of the best. Like we have one of the best teams I think ever, which is Posey's freshman year. But it's 2020, so we only played a few games before it got canceled. I thought we were going to win the national championship that year, so we go in my freshman sophomore year, and there's a lot of success, and all of a sudden it just gets canceled. And we all kind of go back. We lose some of the key leadership that we had from those first 2 years. We come back, which is my junior year, Posey's sophomore year in the fall during COVID, and we just kind of expect, winning is easy. Both of us have done it as soon as we got here. We didn't even have to earn it. We just kind of stepped into it, and we learned a really valuable lesson that, like Posey said, winning is hard. There's a reason not everybody does it, and we had to learn that kind of the hard way. And I remember going into my fifth year, kind of rehabbing back, talking to one of my friends, Jack Trainer, who was one of the captains that year, and just saying, like, look, man, we came into, like, him and I were two players that had played for our freshman year. And so we kind of had the experience on the field, at least, of, winning, playing and winning games. And I remember we were saying to each other, just like, hey, we came into a Final Four team. We need to leave this place we need to leave this place a little bit better than we found it. And kind of miraculously, after a 3-11 season, going to the Final Four, just kind of stamping our legacy and just saying, hey, look, we came into a Final Four. We went through hell, but we ended up coming back to a Final Four, and we're trying to leave this place a little bit better than how we found it. And then I was lucky enough to have an opportunity. That was my last year, my fifth year. I was lucky enough to get an opportunity for a sixth year, which I was not planning on taking. But so ended up doing that, trying with the hopes of coming back for, a championship run and a historic year. And like Posey had mentioned, it didn't really end up like that. And again, it proved the lesson that winning is hard. And you need everybody to be on the same page. And we had a great year, a lot of lessons learned, but not the success that we had the year before. And that's okay. I mean, we tried our best, and sometimes that's all we can do. So yeah, that's kind of it from my perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So you kind of put yourself all over the record books, TJ, in your career here. 152 goals, right, and 100 assists, which I think is third. Is that correct? Behind Grant and Mac, Grant, Ament, Mac O'Keefe, two legendary guys who, when they were together here, it was just they both were scoring like 20 goals a game. It seemed like they were just on fire all the time.
Yeah,
those guys were a lot of fun. And now guys that you're both competing against in the Professional Lacrosse League. TJ, you come into that league. You were two-time Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year, right?
Yep.
Two-time All-American. Get to the PLL last year and end up winning Rookie of the Year, right? Your confidence, obviously, you come out of your college experience, your confidence has got to be pretty high. Did you think, though, that you'd have that kind of impact right away as a pro?
No, it's hard. I never really doubted my ability too much, but I think a big part of playing professional, and I didn't realize this at the time, was it really is team dependent. And I interestingly, like I said, not a very conventional story. You would think that two-time Big Ten Player of the Year or Offensive Player of the Year, you would be a high draft pick. I actually didn't get picked up until the third round, and that ended up being the biggest
out of 4 rounds.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that ended up being one of the biggest blessings for me, because I ended up getting onto a team that really needed someone that had my playing style and my my specific position. I know I'm an attackman, and they needed an attackman, but they needed more of a ball carrier, feeder type of player, and I was able to provide that. And say if I had gotten picked in where I was projected to get picked, which was the first round, I probably wouldn't have been on a team that needed me. And so I felt very lucky because I never doubted my ability. I knew that I would work as hard and be the best possible player I could be in each moment. So that wasn't a question, but it was more, where can I play that will have people around me to complement my style and have me be able to complement my teammates. And so I ended up on the perfect team for me, which is the Maryland Whipsnakes. And I played alongside two attackmen, two absolute legends, Matt Rambo and Zed Williams. They are two of the greatest players of all time in the attack position. So I was kind of a young mentee to them. Playing with them was just a huge honor, as I'd watched years and years of highlights on them. And then being able to play alongside them and play with them and have a lot of success and cheer with them and, celebrate with them. It was pretty amazing season. We ended up going to the championship, ended up losing in the championship to Grant and Mac,
Right.
believe it or not. But it is kind of, like I said, kind of God has a purpose, and I never really doubted my ability. And I just knew that I was going to end up at a spot that would be best, and it really kind of worked out that way. So, yeah, I think what surprised me was just the fact that how lucky I felt being on a team that needed someone like me, because if I had gotten picked up higher, who knows if I would have even – I could have been the same player, same ability, but who knows if I would have even stepped on the field, because if someone had my position just ahead of me, they probably
Right.
would have gotten it, So
Right.
it's pretty really cool how it all works out.
Yeah. So the nature of pro lacrosse at this point, right, is that it's not a year-round gig, and you need to have a day job, right? So you're in Maryland for the season, TJ, and then right now, right, you're in New York and you're doing investment banking. Is that right?
Correct. So,
Okay.
well, the season, we're not even in Maryland either,
Okay.
believe it or not. So, yeah, so the PLL, which is the outdoor league, is different than the NLL, which is the indoor league. Very Canadian. Box lacrosse is a very Canadian sport. I'd say field lacrosse is more American.
Mm-hmm.
And so the PLL, it's a tour-based league. So you just play on the weekends.
Right.
And every week, think about NASCAR, where every week or not every week, but whenever there's a race, all the drivers go to the same location.
Right.
They just race. It's the same with lacrosse. Each weekend, every team will go to a location and they'll play one or two games, and then they'll go home, fly back to wherever they're living, working.
Right.
Next weekend, they'll all fly back to another location. So tons of cool benefits to that, because when I live in New York, live with a lot of PLL guys here. And so every weekend I'm expanding my network by traveling with a bunch of pro lacrosse players. We're getting to know each other on the road, and we're having a ton of fun, and then we're flying back together. So it's a really great way to grow the network. But yeah, that's kind of how it works. So this whole summer I was living in New York City while commuting and playing. So it is tough with work, especially doing investment banking. For example, I was working to around midnight last night, and so it can be hard. But trying to get it done, trying to find a way to stay in shape, and it's kind of the beauty of it all, just finding a way.
Yeah, a young person's game, definitely. Do it while you're young and while you can, right?
Exactly.
And so you guys are both finance grads, right? Jack, you have a finance degree as well. And you guys both have MBAs, I should mention, as well, right?
Yes, sir.
So kind of personifying the student athlete thing in a way that I think all Penn Staters can be proud of. Jack, so you are playing also in the PLL, with the Carolina team, right?
Yes, sir.
And then outside of your playing, you're coaching. Can you talk a little bit about how you balance that?
Yeah. It's definitely a little bit, I think, easier. Maybe I don't know if that's the right word, but it's easier for me to, I guess, stay in shape. So I coach at the Lacrosse Barn in Dallas, Texas. And essentially what I do is I'm the defensive skills coach. So I work with both boys and girls from youth up till high school. And essentially whenever kids get out of class or whenever they get out of school, from about 4 o'clock to about 8 p.m., they'll come in and then they'll do defensive training sessions with me. So throughout the day, there's a lot of responsibility. So the Lacrosse Barn, it's the state-of-the-art lacrosse training facility and like an indoor space. So not only is there training that we provide offensive training and defensive skills training, but then there's renters that come in and club teams or high schools or other trainers that come in and rent the facility space. And a really cool thing about Lacrosse Barn is like it's lacrosse only. So a bunch of teams like football teams, soccer teams, anybody looking for field space, like in Texas too, especially when it's super high, like everybody wants to get inside, but the lacrosse barn's like a sacred place for lacrosse only. And there's a gym in there as well. So we have like a gym that operates out of it and a physical therapist in-house. So for me, it's like this perfect ecosystem of I get to train and coach and give back to the game I love, and share all of the wisdom I've acquired over the years to the next generation in an up and growing area. And Dallas lacrosse, it's not like the traditional hotbeds of Philadelphia or Baltimore or Long Island,
Right.
like traditionally on the East Coast, but I get to help grow a whole new up and coming area, which has just been, it's been really fun and an honor too. But essentially they don't show up until 4. So throughout the day, while I'm working and helping grow the lacrosse barn and doing business development, I mean, we opened on June 1st of this year, or of 2024. So it's very new, very entrepreneurial. So there's a lot of freedom and flexibility for me, which has been awesome. And just gaining that experience and helping start and support a, new venture. It's been pretty cool. But throughout my day, like I get to train, again, we have a gym in house that I get to train with. I've PT right at my disposal, and I'll make sure I get like wall balling or shooting or footwork. And there's actually a group of some PLL guys down here as well. Not as many as TJ has in New York, but actually started to get together and, we've been training, shooting, doing some footwork together. So for me, it's been awesome in the sense of getting to continue to develop my craft and hone in on my craft and be able to share those lessons with the kids and the youth of Dallas. And I've had so many great coaches pour into me, especially being at Penn State. Like, not many people get the opportunity to learn from, a Coach Tambroni, a Coach Haas, a Coach Bucci, or a Coach Myers, right? Just the coaching staff we had at Penn State, we were so privileged. And I think a lot of the times we take that for granted. I think we have one of the best coaching staffs, if not the best coaching staff in the country. So it's like, not only am I able to share all the lessons and the things I've learned from my life, but I get to share it with kids what the best coaches in the world are essentially teaching at the highest level. And now I break that down so it works with youth and up to high school. And obviously the complexities will change as kids can understand it. But I definitely for a long time have felt that I've been blessed with so many great people in my life who have not only taught me how to play the sport of lacrosse, but they've taught me how to take care of myself physically and perform, at an elite level as an athlete. But then also like all the lessons I've learned in life and just the perseverance and like from like people like TJ and a lot of our other teammates too, who went through a lot of trials throughout their times at Penn State, and like being able to see their perseverance and how they push through. Like being able to coach gives me that platform to share those like miracles and to share those stories with these kids. Because a lot of the times when I work with them, they come across or they share some troubles that they're going through as well, like with their athletic careers. And really for me, like, not only am I a coach, but I'm a mentor in some sense. And I'm that sounding board like TJ was for me and I was for him playing wall ball. So it's cool that not only I get to help develop the lacrosse down here in Dallas, but to help develop young men and women as well, and to help them just grow in their strength and their perseverance. So yeah, that's the lacrosse barn. And training's a little bit easier for me, but at the same time, it has its challenges, and it's a very entrepreneurial role. So that's been something that I've been so grateful to have at such an early phase in my life. But yeah, the lacrosse barn, if you like lacrosse, you need to come down. It is like the greatest place in the world. And TJ, we got to get you down to the lacrosse barn soon, man. If you play, like, it is like a kid in a candy shop. There's thousands of balls to shoot. There's like a bunch of nets. There's all this open space. It is, I think, outside of Panzer Stadium, the coolest place in the world to play lacrosse. So
That was a good disclaimer.
If there's a wall, I'm in. No, I'm just kidding.
there's 4 of them.
All right, let's go.
Jack, if I didn't know better, I would have guessed that you were not a finance major, but a marketing major, because that is a great spiel right there to sell this, to sell where you are and what you're doing. It's just very cool too. Again, I'm not as sort of in-depth knowledgeable about lacrosse, but I have grown to appreciate the sport more and more, especially since I've been back on campus. And it seems like a really cool time for the sport because there's clear growth potential there, right? As far as regionally and just getting more interest in it. You guys are both kind of at the heart of that right now, both as players and Jack, you on the developmental side. So that's got to be neat for you guys. I know we're getting short on time here, but I wanted to wrap up. You guys have not been off campus for all that long. I'm wondering what you miss from being in Happy Valley, even away from lacrosse. I'm sure how much you guys miss being part of that team and part of that locker room. But just from being on campus and living in town, what are the things that you found that you missed since you guys left?
I mean, first and foremost, the guys. I think like that's something I always appreciated. I didn't take for granted, but now that I'm away from that atmosphere, and I think Brian, we were mentioning like there's 54 other guys who I was with every single day, and now being out here, I train with a couple other pro guys, but it's just not the same. And TJ and I, we had 6 guys in our house, and being able to just to come home and throw the TV on and hang out and share meals together and just have just the stupid conversations and little arguments and debates and all that kind of stuff. Like that's the thing I miss the most, just like the relationship piece. And it's awesome. Like I'm super excited, and I've been trying to keep in touch with some of the guys. Their season opener is coming up in 2 weeks. I think they scrimmage Army tomorrow. But in the sense of like, what do I miss the most? It's like the people, the coaches, like my mentors. I'll say this, one of the things that I truly miss a lot is there's this little restaurant called Brothers Pizza and Pasta. I forget which road it's off of, but it's like going towards the mall. And we used to go.
Right? College Ave?
Yeah, it's going East College. That's right.
Yeah.
And we used to go there all the time. Like we get chicken parm, and yeah, it's cool to see. Like now you talk about like what legacy did we leave? People still go, hey, let's go. Vincent in the chat.
But, Vincent, our producer, just dropped into the chat. Yeah, that was his favorite pizza spot as well.
Yeah, it's great. But there are guys who will still go. And like now I think one of our teammates, like Mark McKeon, he'll let me know every once in a while if they go, and like they'll get like 15 or 20 guys to go. And it's cool to see that like guys are still like coming together and sharing meals over that. And they're chicken parm. Man, I miss that a lot. But TJ, what about you?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's the locker room. I never really think too much about the lacrosse stuff anymore, but it's about the people, and just exactly what Jack said. But you think about all the funny conversations, all the times you've laughed, all the times that you thought it was the end of the world, but you're living in this small microcosm of Penn State, and you realize how light it really is, and how much fun it was. And so that's really the big thing. I was able to get back to Penn State for the SMU game, for the football game, and that was my first time being back at Penn State ever. Being at Penn State ever, not for lacrosse, because I had only been to Penn State when I went on my one visit to Penn State, and then I had only been to Penn State when I was a Penn State lacrosse player. And so this was my first time just being as a regular student, regular alum.
You're an alum now, man.
Alum, yeah, exactly. It's been a while. I've been a student for a long time. So, but no, regular alum, and it felt really cool to stop by the guys' houses, say hi to the team, and then be with my dad and my brother at the football game. But it was just a cool, different perspective that I never had before. And it really just goes to show how special Penn State is. And so a lot of times I think as an athlete, you don't really realize it because you're always just kind of stuck in your bubble. And the one thing Posey and I tried to do was just try to get out of our bubble. And I think we did a lot. And we probably both wish that we did more, just because that's what makes Penn State special.
Yeah, it's hard, again, as big as this place is, the whole university system and certainly University Park, it's tough to take advantage of everything. But I think you guys certainly, within the time you had outside of classes in lacrosse, it sounds like you guys made the most of it. So we do need to wrap up, but I could talk to you guys all day long. I have lacrosse questions. I want to know why the face-off is so sort of important when, like, if you just have one face-off guy who's better than the other teams and you win every face-off, that doesn't seem fair. I've never understood that. The substitution patterns still throw me off sometimes. So that's a whole nother conversation we can have at some point. But for now, listen, I really appreciate you guys being on. It was great to talk to you both. Great to see the success you continue to have and how well you certainly represent your alma mater. We appreciate it. So TJ and Jack, thank you guys very much and good luck with everything and hope to see you back up here soon.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you, guys.